The video opens with a scene that immediately sets the tone for what's to come. A man in his late 40s steps out of a sleek, black luxury car, its polished surface gleaming under the harsh midday sun. His tailored suit fits him like a second skin, exuding power and authority. The camera doesn't linger on the car or the bustling cityscape behind him, but instead focuses on his face. It's a face etched with confidence, perhaps even arrogance. Yet there's something beneath the surface, a flicker of unease almost imperceptible that hints at a deeper story waiting to unfold. This man is Arthur Mendonça, a name synonymous with success in the business world. He's the kind of person who commands attention without saying a word. As he walks toward the towering glass doors of his corporate headquarters, surrounded by reporters and photographers clamoring for his attention, you can't help but feel drawn into his orbit. But before we delve further into this moment, let's rewind the clock and uncover the layers of this enigmatic figure. Arthur wasn't always the millionaire CEO you see today. In fact, if you were to meet him 30 years ago, you'd hardly recognize him. Born into abject poverty in a small, forgotten town on the outskirts of São Paulo, Brazil, Arthur's childhood was anything but glamorous. His early years were marked by struggle, constant hunger, cold nights spent huddled together with his mother in their cramped one-room shack, and the ever-present fear of eviction looming over them like a storm cloud. His father? Absent from the very beginning, leaving his mother, Maria Clara, to raise him alone. Maria Clara worked tirelessly to provide for her son, taking on odd jobs wherever she could find them. She cleaned houses, washed clothes, and even scavenged through trash bins when times got especially tough. Despite the hardships, she instilled in young Arthur a fierce determination to rise above their circumstances. "You're destined for greatness," she would often tell him, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and desperation. Those words became his mantra, driving him forward even when the odds seemed insurmountable. But life had other plans. When Arthur was just 12 years old, a series of events unfolded that would forever alter the course of his life. One particularly brutal winter, Maria Clara fell ill, a severe case of pneumonia that left her bedridden for weeks, with no money. For medical treatment and rent overdue, they faced an impossible choice. Either Arthur would drop out of school to work full-time, or they would lose their home entirely. Maria Clara, ever selfless, made the decision for him. "Go," she whispered weakly, her voice barely audible. "Find a way to survive." And so Arthur did just that. He took on menial jobs, delivering newspapers, shining shoes, and running errands for local shopkeepers. Every penny he earned went toward keeping a roof over their heads and food on the table. Yet despite his efforts, the weight of their situation grew heavier with each passing day. The landlord eventually showed up at their door demanding payment. When Maria Clara couldn't produce the money, he gave her an ultimatum: leave voluntarily, or he'd call the authorities to remove them forcibly. It was during this pivotal moment that Arthur made a decision that haunted him for decades to come. Faced with the prospect of homelessness and starvation, he chose to distance himself from his mother, not because he didn't love her, but because he believed it was the only way to secure a better future for both of them. He convinced himself that if he could escape their dire circumstances, he could return one day and lift her out of poverty. It was a gamble, fueled by youthful idealism and a desperate desire to change their fate. Little did he know how much this decision would cost him emotionally. Years passed, and Arthur threw himself into his studies and work with relentless intensity. He excelled academically, earning scholarships that allowed him to attend prestigious universities. Along the way, he adopted a ruthless mindset, believing that sentimentality had no place in the pursuit of success. By the time he reached his 30s, he had built a multi-million-dollar empire from scratch, leveraging his intelligence, ambition, and unyielding drive. To the outside world, he was the epitome of achievement, a self-made man who had risen from nothing to conquer everything. Yet beneath the polished exterior lay a man tormented by guilt and regret. Though he rarely allowed himself to dwell on the past, fragments of memories occasionally surfaced, especially during quiet moments when the noise of his busy life subsided. Images of his mother's tired eyes, her weathered hands, and the sound of her voice urging him to dream big haunted his subconscious. He told himself that he had done what was necessary, that his sacrifices had been justified, but deep down, he knew otherwise. Somewhere along the way, he had lost sight of the boy who once vowed to save his mother from a life of hardship. Now, standing outside his corporate headquarters, Arthur feels a strange sense of déjà vu. The reporter's questions fade into the background as his gaze drifts across the street. There, sitting on the curb with two young children clinging to her side, is a woman whose face triggers something primal within him. At first glance, she appears unremarkable, a beggar like any other, her clothes worn and dirty, her expression weary. But as Arthur studies her more closely, a wave of recognition washes over him. Her features, though aged and lined with suffering, bear an uncanny resemblance to someone he hasn't seen in nearly 3 decades. His heart pounds in his chest as conflicting emotions surge within him. Shock, disbelief, and a pang of guilt all collide, leaving him momentarily paralyzed. Who is this woman? Why does she look so familiar? And why does seeing her evoke such a visceral reaction? Before he can process these thoughts, one of his assistants taps him on the shoulder, snapping him back to reality. "Mr. Mendonça, we need to get inside," the assistant says urgently, gesturing toward the building. Arthur hesitates for a fraction of a second longer, his eyes locked onto the woman. Then, with a curt nod, he turns away and strides toward the entrance, his composure masking the turmoil brewing inside him. As he disappears into the lobby, the camera lingers on the woman for a moment longer, capturing the faint glimmer of curiosity in her eyes as she watches him walk away. Before we move on to the next chapter, take a moment to reflect on Arthur's journey thus far. What drives a person to sacrifice everything, including their own family, for the sake of success? And what happens when the ghosts of the past refuse to stay buried? If you're enjoying this story and want to see where it goes, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content. Now, let's dive deeper into the lives of the characters involved, starting with the woman who unknowingly holds the key to unlocking Arthur's buried secrets. As the camera shifts its focus from Arthur's towering presence to the woman sitting on the curb, the scene slows down. The bustling city noise fades slightly, replaced by a softer soundscape, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional chatter of passers-by, and the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. The woman, Maria Clara, sits cross-legged on the cracked pavement, her back against a graffiti-covered wall. She holds a cardboard sign that reads, "Please help. Anything helps." Beside her, 2 children, a boy and a girl, cling to her arms, their small faces smudged with dirt but alive with curiosity. They look up at strangers walking past, their wide eyes searching for kindness in a world that often ignores them. Maria Clara is not just another faceless figure in the crowd of urban poverty. Her story is as complex and layered as Arthur's, though it has unfolded along a very different path. To understand who she is now, and why her presence has such a profound impact on Arthur, we must delve into her own journey, one marked by resilience, heartbreak, and an unyielding love for her children. Born into a modest family in the same town where Arthur spent his childhood, Maria Clara grew up surrounded by simplicity rather than squalor. Her parents were laborers who worked long hours in the fields, earning just enough to keep food on the table. While life was far from easy, there was warmth in their home, a sense of unity that shielded Maria Clara from the harsher realities of the world. From a young age, she learned the value of hard work and compassion, traits that would define her later years. Her teenage years brought both joy and sorrow. At 16, she fell in love with a local carpenter named João, a kind-hearted man with dreams of building a better future for himself and his eventual family. They married soon after, and for a brief period, Maria Clara experienced a taste of happiness. João doted on her, promising to provide for her and any children they might have. But fate had other plans. When Maria Clara became pregnant with Arthur, Joan's health began to deteriorate rapidly, what started as persistent. Fatigue turned out to be a rare autoimmune disorder, leaving him unable to work and dependent on medication he couldn't afford. Joan's illness drained their savings, forcing Maria Clara to take on multiple jobs to support them. Despite her efforts, Joan succumbed to his condition shortly after Arthur's birth. Left alone with a newborn and mounting debts, Maria Clara found herself thrust into a role she hadn't anticipated, that of sole provider and protector. Yet, even in the face of overwhelming adversity, she refused to give up. Her determination to raise Arthur with dignity and hope became her guiding light, shaping every decision she made in the years that followed. Fast forward to the present day, and Maria Clara's life bears little resemblance to the hopeful beginnings she once envisioned. After Arthur left to pursue his ambitions, communication between mother and son dwindled until it ceased entirely. At first, Maria Clara held on to hope, believing that Arthur would return once he achieved success. She imagined him coming back to rescue her from the struggles of daily life, fulfilling the promise she saw in his bright eyes as a child. But as months turned into years, reality set in. Arthur wasn't coming back, not in the way she had hoped, at least, in the absence of her son. Maria Clara forged ahead, finding solace in faith and community. She remarried several years later, this time to a man named Carlos, who shared her values and commitment to family. Together they welcomed 2 children, a boy named Lucas and a girl named Sophia, into their lives. For a while, things seemed to improve. Carlos worked steadily as a mechanic, and Maria Clara managed their household with care. However, tragedy struck again when Carlos died unexpectedly in a car accident, leaving Maria Clara widowed for the second time. Once more, Maria Clara found herself alone, responsible for raising 2 young children without financial stability or support. Unlike her earlier years with Arthur, however, she no longer had the physical stamina or energy to juggle multiple jobs. Age and hardship had taken their toll, leaving her increasingly reliant on charity and odd jobs to make ends meet. Eventually, circumstances forced her onto the streets, where she now spends her days begging for spare change alongside Lucas and Sophia. Lucas and Sophia are central to Maria Clara's current existence. Though their lives are fraught with challenges, they remain a source of immense pride and purpose for her. Lucas, the older of the 2 at 10 years old, is fiercely protective of his mother and sister. He often scours nearby dumpsters for scraps of food or discarded items they can use or sell. Despite his tender age, he carries the weight of responsibility on his narrow shoulders, doing whatever it takes to ensure his family survives another day. Sophia, 7 years old, is quieter and more introspective than her brother. She clings tightly to Maria Clara, seeking comfort in her embrace whenever fear threatens to overwhelm her. There's a spark of innocence in Sophia's eyes, a reminder that despite everything, she still believes in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. It's this unwavering optimism that keeps Maria Clara going, even on the darkest days. Both children share a striking resemblance to Arthur, though neither knows of their connection to him. Their dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and expressive eyes mirror his features from childhood, serving as a silent link between past and present. This resemblance will play a crucial role in unraveling the mystery that binds Maria Clara and Arthur together. To truly grasp Maria Clara's plight, we need to step into her shoes and witness a typical day in her life. The morning begins early before the sun rises. She wakes Lucas and Sophia gently, ensuring they've eaten whatever meager breakfast she managed to scrape together the night before. Then, armed with her cardboard sign and a tattered blanket, she leads them to their usual spot near the busy intersection. Throughout the day, Maria Clara endures countless indignities. Some people walk by without so much as a glance, their faces hardened by indifference. Others toss coins into her makeshift cup, avoiding eye contact as if acknowledging her humanity might somehow tarnish their own. Occasionally, someone stops to offer words of encouragement or a sandwich, moments of kindness that momentarily lift her spirits. But for every act of generosity, there are insults hurled by those who blame her for her situation, accusing her of laziness or poor choices. Despite the hardships, Maria Clara maintains a quiet dignity. She shields Lucas and Sophia from the worst of it, teaching them to hold their heads high and treat others with respect, regardless of how they're treated. In return, we may not have much, she tells them often, but we have our integrity. That's something no one can take away. By late afternoon, exhaustion sets in. Maria Clara's legs ache from sitting on the hard pavement, and her voice grows hoarse from calling out to passers-by. Still, she presses on, knowing that every coin counts. When night falls, they retreat to a makeshift shelter beneath an overpass, huddling together for warmth as the city lights flicker in the distance. It's here, in the quiet moments before sleep claims them, that Maria Clara allows herself to dream of a different life, one where her children grow up safe, educated, and free from the burdens she carries. Unbeknownst to Maria Clara, her life is about to intersect with Arthur's in ways she could never predict. As she sits on the curb that fateful day, watching the wealthy businessmen stride past her, she feels a strange sense of familiarity. Something about his gait, the way he carries himself, stirs memories buried deep within her subconscious. For a fleeting moment, she wonders if she's seen him before, but dismisses the thought almost immediately. How could someone like him possibly know someone like her? Meanwhile, Arthur wrestles with similar questions. Back in his office, seated behind a mahogany desk piled high with documents, he finds himself distracted. His mind drifts back to the woman on the street, her weary face haunting him like a ghost from his past. Who is she? Why does she look so much like her? The answers elude him, but one thing is certain. He can't shake the feeling that their meeting was no coincidence. Before we move on to the next chapter, let's pause and reflect on Maria Clara's incredible strength and resilience. Despite losing nearly everything, she continues to fight for her children, embodying the true meaning of unconditional love. Stories like hers remind us that behind every face we encounter, there's a rich tapestry of experiences waiting to be understood. If you're moved by her journey, consider subscribing to our channel for more stories that explore the human condition in all its complexity. Now let's transition to the pivotal moment when Arthur and Maria Clara's paths collide head-on. Back in his office, Arthur tries to focus on the mountain of work awaiting him, contracts to review, meetings to prepare for, decisions that could shape the future of his company. But no matter how hard he pushes himself, his mind keeps drifting back to the woman on the street. He can't shake the image of her face, weathered by time, yet hauntingly familiar. It's as if some invisible thread connects them, tugging at his consciousness and refusing to let go. At first, he dismisses it as paranoia, a trick of the light perhaps, or an overactive imagination triggered by stress. After all, he's seen countless people like her during his rise to power. The homeless, the desperate, the forgotten, they're part of the urban landscape, mere shadows in the periphery of his world. Yet, this woman, she's different. There's something about her eyes, her posture, even the way she holds the two children close to her side that feels eerily personal. As the hours pass, Arthur grows increasingly agitated. He paces around his office, glancing out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below. His assistant knocks twice, reminding him of an upcoming board meeting, but he waves her off with a curt gesture. For once, the demands of his empire take a backseat to the storm brewing inside him. He knows he should ignore it, move on, and return to the life he's built, but deep down, he also knows he can't. Finally, unable to resist the pull any longer, Arthur makes a decision. He grabs his coat, tells his assistant he'll be unavailable for the rest of the afternoon, and heads back outside. The streets are busier now, teeming with people rushing to their destinations. Yet, amidst the chaos, one figure stands out, the same woman, still sitting on the curb with her children. As Arthur approaches her, his heart pounds in his chest, each step bringing him closer to a truth he isn't sure he's ready to face. From Maria Clara's point of view, the day has been much like any other. She's endured the usual mix of indifference, pity, and occasional kindness from strangers. By late afternoon, fatigue begins to set in, her body aching from hours spent on the unforgiving pavement. Lucas and Sophia sit beside her, their energy waning as hunger gnaws at their stomachs. Just as she considers packing up and heading to their makeshift shelter, a man approaches her. At first glance, he seems like any other passerby, well-dressed, confident, exuding an aura of authority. But as he draws nearer, Maria Clara notices something unusual. His gaze lingers on her longer than most people's do, studying her face with an intensity that makes her uncomfortable. There's recognition in his eyes, though she can't quite place why. Has she seen him before? Did he know someone from her past? Or is it simply her imagination playing tricks on her? When the man finally speaks, his voice is low and hesitant, tinged with an emotion she can't quite identify. "Excuse me," he says, kneeling slightly to meet her eye level. Do I know you?" Maria Clara blinks, startled by the question. She shakes her head slowly, unsure how to respond. "I don't think so," she replies, her tone cautious. "Why do you ask?" For a moment, neither of them speaks. The silence stretches between them, heavy with unspoken words and buried memories. Then, almost involuntarily, Maria Clara's gaze shifts to the children beside her. The man follows, her line of sight, his expression shifting from curiosity to shock as he studies their faces. Something clicks in his mind, a realization that sends a jolt through his entire being. It's the boy who triggers it. Lucas looks up at the stranger, his dark eyes locking onto Arthur's with a mixture of curiosity and defiance. In that instant, Arthur sees himself reflected back at him, a younger version of himself, with the same sharp features and determined gaze. The resemblance is uncanny, undeniable. His breath catches in his throat as pieces of the puzzle begin to fall into place. Sophia, sensing the tension, leans closer to her mother, whispering, "Who is he, Mama?" Her voice is soft but filled with apprehension, breaking the spell momentarily. Maria Clara hesitates, her instincts screaming at her to protect her children from whatever this man might represent. Yet there's something about him, something achingly familiar, that stops her from dismissing him outright. Arthur struggles to compose himself, his mind racing with questions. Could these children be his siblings? If so, what does that mean about the woman sitting before him? Is it possible that after all these years, fate has brought him face to face with the person he abandoned so long ago? Summoning every ounce of courage, Arthur turns his attention back to Maria Clara. "Your name?" he says, his voice trembling slightly. "What's your name?" She stares at him, confusion and suspicion etched across her face. "Maria Clara," she answers warily. "Why does it matter to you?" The name hits Arthur like a freight train, knocking the air out of his lungs. Memories flood back in vivid detail, the sound of her singing lullabies to him as a child, the warmth of her embrace, the sacrifices she made to keep him alive. Tears well up in his eyes, threatening to spill over. He opens his mouth to speak, but no words come out. How do you apologize for a lifetime of absence? How do you explain the choices that led you here? Realizing he needs to tread carefully, Arthur takes a deep breath and tries again. I think I knew you once," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. "A long time ago." Maria Clara narrows her eyes, scrutinizing him more closely. Recognition dawns slowly, like the first rays of sunlight breaking through a dense fog. "Arthur," she murmurs, her voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. "Is that really you?" The confirmation sends a shiver down Arthur's spine. Hearing his name spoken by her lips after so many years feels surreal, almost otherworldly. He nods, tears streaming down his face now. "Yes," he whispers, "it's me." For a moment they simply stare at each other, the enormity of the moment hanging between them like a fragile thread. Then Maria Clara's expression hardens, the initial shock giving way to anger and pain. "You disappeared," she says sharply, her voice rising. "You left us without a word, without looking back. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" To him, her words cut deeper than any blade ever could. Arthur flinches, guilt washing over him in waves. He wants to defend himself, to explain the rationale behind his actions, but he knows there's no justification for what he did. Instead, he lowers his head, unable to meet her gaze. "I'm sorry," he mutters, his voice choked with emotion. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I could come back and fix everything. Maria Clara cuts him off, her tone bitter. You can't fix everything, Arthur. Some wounds never heal, and some bridges can't be rebuilt. Despite her harsh words, Maria Clara's resolve falters when she sees the raw pain in Arthur's eyes. For all his wealth and success, he looks like a lost child, searching for redemption in a world that has moved on without him. Against her better judgment, she softens slightly, allowing herself to acknowledge the complexity of their shared history. You've changed, she says quietly, her voice tinged with sadness. But so has everything else. These are your brother and sister, she adds, gesturing toward Lucas and Sophia. They deserve to know who you are. Whether you stay or leave is up to you, but don't expect forgiveness overnight. Arthur nods, understanding the gravity of her words. He knows he has a long road ahead of him if he hopes to earn back even a fraction of the trust he shattered. But for the first time in years, he feels a flicker of hope, a chance to reconnect with the family he left behind and make amends for the mistakes of his past. Before leaving, Arthur presses a wad of cash into Maria Clara's hand, insisting it's not charity, but a gesture of goodwill. She hesitates before accepting it, her pride warring with practicality. This doesn't change anything, she warns him, her voice firm. If you truly want to help, prove it with actions, not money. Arthur agrees, promising to reach out again soon. As he walks away, his mind races with possibilities. What started as a fleeting encounter has evolved into something far greater, an opportunity to rewrite the narrative of his life and rediscover the values he once held dear. This pivotal moment marks the beginning of Arthur's transformation. Though the road ahead will be fraught with challenges, it's clear that his encounter with Maria Clara has awakened something within him, a longing to reclaim the humanity he sacrificed in pursuit of success. Meanwhile, Maria Clara faces her own dilemma, whether to let Arthur back into her life or continue shielding her children from potential heartbreak. Before we move on to the climactic chapters of this story, take a moment to reflect on the power of second chances. Life often presents us with opportunities to reconcile with our past, but seizing those moments requires courage, humility, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. If this story resonates with you, please consider subscribing to our channel for more narratives that explore the depth of human experience. Now, let's dive into the next phase of Arthur and Maria Clara's journey, where secrets unravel, relationships are tested, and redemption becomes a tangible possibility. After leaving Maria Clara and the children, Arthur doesn't return to his office or resume his usual routine. Instead, he retreats to a quiet cafe nearby, ordering a black coffee he barely touches as his mind races. He knows he can't move forward without understanding the full scope of what happened after he left. Who is Carlos? What led Maria Clara to end up on the streets? And most importantly, why did she never reach out to him, even when things got dire? Determined to piece together the puzzle, Arthur enlists the help of a private investigator, a discreet professional known for handling sensitive cases. Over the next few days, Arthur receives updates that paint a heartbreaking picture of Maria Clara's life post-Arthur. The reports reveal details about her second marriage to Carlos, a kind man who provided stability until his untimely death in a car accident. They detail the financial struggles that followed, exacerbated by mounting medical bills and the challenges of raising two young children alone. Finally, they confirm what Arthur already suspected. Maria Clara had tried to contact him multiple times during those difficult years, writing letters and making phone calls that went unanswered because Arthur had deliberately cut ties, changing addresses and phone numbers to avoid reminders of his old life. Each new piece of information hits Arthur like a hammer blow. The guilt he felt during their initial encounter intensifies, morphing into something almost unbearable. He realizes now that his decision to leave wasn't just an act of self-preservation, it was a betrayal of the woman who sacrificed everything for him. Worse still, he understands that his absence left Maria Clara vulnerable, robbing her of the support system she desperately needed. While Arthur processes the revelations from the investigation, Maria Clara faces her own internal battle. After their encounter, she returns to the makeshift shelter beneath the overpass, her mind swirling with conflicting emotions. Part of her wants to believe that Arthur's reappearance is genuine, that he truly regrets abandoning her and is ready to make amends. But another part of her remains guarded, unwilling to let down the walls she built to protect herself and her children from further pain. Lucas and Sophia sense the tension in their mother, though they don't fully understand its source. "Who was that man?" Lucas asks cautiously as they settle in for the night. "He looked at us like he knew us." Maria Clara hesitates before answering, unsure how much to share. "That was your brother," she says finally, her voice heavy with emotion. "Or at least, he used to be." Her words hang in the air, prompting more questions from the children. Sophia looks up at her, wide-eyed. "Why did he leave? Doesn't he love us?" The question pierces Maria Clara's heart, reminding her of the countless nights she spent wondering the same thing about Arthur. She pulls Sophia closer, kissing the top of her head. "Sometimes people make mistakes," she explains gently. "They think they're doing the right thing, but it hurts others instead. It's complicated." Though her explanation satisfies the children for the moment, Maria Clara knows she'll need to decide soon whether to allow Arthur back into their lives. On one hand, his resources could provide stability for Lucas and Sophia, giving them opportunities she's been unable to offer. On the other hand, trusting him again feels like opening an old wound, one that might never fully heal. Several days later, Arthur arranges another meeting with Maria Clara, this time in a quieter setting, away from prying eyes. He chooses a small park on the outskirts of the city where they can talk without interruption. When Maria Clara arrives with Lucas and Sophia in tow, Arthur notices the weariness etched into her features. Despite her attempts to appear composed, it's clear she's carrying the weight of years of hardship. They sit on a weathered bench overlooking a pond, the children playing nearby under Maria Clara's watchful gaze. For a while, neither speaks, the silence between them thick with unspoken words. Finally, Arthur breaks it, his voice trembling with emotion. "I owe you an apology," he begins, his eyes locked onto hers, "not just for leaving, but for everything that came after. I thought I was protecting you by staying away, but all I did was cause more harm." Maria Clara listens silently, her expression unreadable. When Arthur finishes speaking, she takes a deep breath before responding. "Apologies don't change the past, Arthur," she says evenly. "You left me when I needed you most. You promised to come back, but you didn't. Do you know what that did to me? To us?" Her words sting, but Arthur doesn't shy away from them. He nods, acknowledging the truth in her statement. "I know I failed you," he admits, "and I can't undo what's been done, but I'm here now, and I want to make things right for you, for Lucas, for Sophia, whatever it takes." Maria Clara studies him closely, searching for sincerity in his eyes. She sees it there, a raw vulnerability that wasn't present in the arrogant young man who walked out of her life all those years ago. Still, she's hesitant to trust him completely. "Actions speak louder than word," she reminds him. "If you're serious about helping, prove it. Don't just throw money at the problem, be part of the solution." Arthur nods, understanding the gravity of her request. "I will let get go," he promises, "starting today." True to his word, Arthur begins taking steps to improve Maria Clara and the children's situation. At first, he does so anonymously, funding initiatives aimed at supporting homeless families in the community. He donates to local shelters, sponsors educational programs, and even hires contractors to renovate dilapidated housing units. These efforts earn him praise from community leaders, though no one suspects the personal connection driving his actions. Weeks turn into months. Arthur becomes increasingly involved in the day-to-day lives of Maria Clara, Lucas, and Sophia. He visits them regularly, bringing groceries, clothes, and toys for the children. He helps Lucas with his schoolwork and reads bedtime stories to Sophia, slowly building a rapport with his half-siblings. Through these interactions, he begins to rediscover the joy of simple human connection, the kind of fulfillment that money and power could never provide. For Maria Clara, watching Arthur's transformation is both heartwarming and bittersweet. She sees glimpses of the boy she once raised in the man sitting across from her, yet she's acutely aware of the years they lost. Still, she allows herself to hope, for Lucas and Sophia's sake, if nothing else. Perhaps this is their chance to build a new kind of family, one rooted in forgiveness and mutual respect. Just as Arthur begins to find his footing in this new role, a crisis emerges that threatens to derail everything he's worked toward. Maria. Clara falls ill, a severe respiratory infection brought on by years of exposure to harsh living conditions. The illness progresses rapidly, leaving her bedridden and dependent on medical care she can't afford. Lucas and Sophia, already struggling to cope with their mother's deteriorating health, face the prospect of losing the person who has always been their anchor. When Arthur learns of Maria Clara's condition, he's faced with a choice: continue operating behind the scenes, maintaining his anonymity, or step into the spotlight and use his influence to secure the help she needs. Either option comes with risks. Revealing his identity could expose him to public scrutiny, potentially damaging his reputation. Yet failing to act would mean turning his back on the very people he claims to care about. This dilemma sets the stage for the next major turning point in the story, where Arthur must confront not only external pressures, but also the lingering doubts within himself. Can he rise to the occasion and embrace his responsibilities as a son and brother, or will fear and pride hold him back once again? Before we delve into the final chapters of this narrative, let's pause to reflect on the themes emerging from Arthur and Maria Clara's journey. Redemption is rarely easy. It requires facing uncomfortable truths, making sacrifices, and committing to change, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Yet it's also profoundly transformative, offering individuals the chance to rewrite their stories and forge deeper connections with those around them. If this story resonates with you, please consider subscribing to our channel for more explorations of the human experience. Now, let's explore the climactic moments ahead, where Arthur's resolve is tested, relationships are pushed to their limits, and the true meaning of family is revealed. Maria Clara's health deteriorates rapidly, grim reminder of the toll her years of struggle have taken on her body. Her persistent cough worsens, accompanied by fever and labored breathing. Despite her resilience, she can no longer mask the severity of her condition. Lucas and Sophia, though young, recognize the gravity of the situation. They cling to her side, their wide eyes filled with fear and confusion. One evening, as Maria Clara lies on a thin mattress in their makeshift shelter, she struggles to breathe. Her face is pale, her hands trembling as she tries to reassure her children. "It's okay," she whispers hoarsely, though her voice betrays her own uncertainty. "We'll get through this together." But deep down, Maria Clara knows they can't manage alone. Medical treatment is beyond their means, and without intervention, her condition will only worsen. She thinks about reaching out to Arthur again, but hesitates, torn between pride and desperation. Would he truly follow through on his promises, or would he retreat back into the safety of his privileged world? When news of Maria Clara's illness reaches Arthur, it shakes him to his core. He receives a call from one of the community workers he's been collaborating with, who explains the direness of her situation. She needs proper medical care, the worker says urgently. Without it, she might not pull through. Arthur feels a surge of panic mixed with guilt. He knows he has the resources to help, financially, logistically, and influentially, but doing so openly would expose his connection to Maria Clara and the children. Publicly acknowledging them could invite scrutiny, speculation, and potentially damage his carefully curated image as a successful CEO. Yet failing to act would mean abandoning them once again, perpetuating the cycle of neglect that has haunted him for decades. For hours, Arthur paces his penthouse apartment, wrestling with the decision. Memories of his childhood flood back, the nights spent huddled with Maria Clara, her sacrifices to keep him alive, the promise he made to himself to repay her someday. How could he turn his back on her now when she needs him most. Finally, he makes up his mind. This isn't just about repairing his relationship with Maria Clara. It's about honoring the values he lost sight of in his pursuit of success. It's about being the man his mother raised him to be. The next morning, Arthur takes decisive action. He arranges for Maria Clara to be admitted to a top-tier hospital under an alias, ensuring she receives the best possible care without drawing immediate attention. Simultaneously, he begins orchestrating a larger plan, one that involves not only saving Maria Clara, but also addressing the systemic issues that led to her predicament. Arthur calls an emergency meeting with his executive team, explaining that he'll be taking an extended leave of absence to focus on personal matters. His announcement shocks everyone, especially given the timing. A major merger is on the horizon, but Arthur is resolute. "There are things more important than business," he tells them firmly. "I need to take care of my family." Behind closed doors, Arthur drafts a statement revealing his connection to Maria Clara and the children. He acknowledges his past mistakes, expressing remorse for leaving her and vowing to make amends. The statement concludes with a pledge to use his wealth and influence to support marginalized communities, starting with initiatives aimed at eradicating homelessness and improving access to health care. Though releasing the statement carries significant risks, Arthur decides transparency is essential. He realizes that hiding behind anonymity won't bring about lasting change. It's time to step into the spotlight and lead by example. When Arthur's statement goes public, it sends shockwaves through both the media and society at large. Social networks explode with reactions ranging from admiration to skepticism. Some praise him for his courage and commitment to social causes, calling him a role model for corporate leaders. Others accuse him of grandstanding, questioning whether his actions are motivated by genuine remorse or a desire to salvage his reputation. Despite the backlash, Arthur remains steadfast. He grants interviews to select journalists, sharing his story in raw, unfiltered detail. He speaks candidly about his childhood, his decision to leave Maria Clara, and the guilt that has haunted him ever since. His vulnerability resonates with many, humanizing him in ways his polished public persona never could. Meanwhile, Maria Clara watches the coverage from her hospital bed, tears streaming down her face. Though she initially resists accepting Arthur's help, seeing his sincerity softens her resolve. "Maybe you've changed after all," she tells him during one of his visits. "But remember, actions matter more than words." Arthur nods, promising to honor her trust. Together, they begin rebuilding their fractured relationship, one small step at a time. For Lucas and Sophia, Arthur's presence brings a mix of excitement and apprehension. On one hand, they're thrilled to have a brother who showers them with attention and gifts. On the other hand, they're wary of getting too attached, fearing another abandonment. Arthur senses their hesitation and works tirelessly to earn their trust. He spends weekends teaching Lucas how to play chess, encouraging him to think strategically and dream big. With Sophia, he bonds over art projects, marveling at her creativity and imagination. Slowly but surely, the children begin to see him not just as a wealthy benefactor, but as a genuine part of their family. One evening, as they sit together in the hospital waiting room, Sophia looks up at Arthur and asks, "Are you going to stay this time?" Arthur pauses, struck by the simplicity and profundity of her question. He kneels down to meet her eye level, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Yes," he says firmly, "I'm not going anywhere." Thanks to Arthur's efforts, Maria Clara receives the medical care she desperately needs. Over time, her condition improves, allowing her to regain strength and mobility. As she recovers, she reflects on the journey that brought her here, the hardships, the sacrifices, and the unexpected second chance at reconciliation. During one particularly poignant moment, Maria Clara sits with Arthur in the hospital garden, watching Lucas and Sophia play nearby. "You've done well for yourself," she says softly, her voice tinged with pride. "But don't forget where you came from. Success isn't measured by what you achieve, it's measured by how you treat others." Arthur nods, absorbing her wisdom. He knows she's right. For too long, he equated success with material wealth and professional accolades. Now he understands that true fulfillment comes from nurturing relationships, giving back to the community, and staying grounded in one's humanity. As Maria Clara continues her recovery, Arthur expands his philanthropic efforts, channeling his resources into sustainable programs designed to uplift marginalized communities. He partners with local organizations to build affordable housing, fund educational scholarships, and provide job training for individuals struggling to escape poverty. His actions inspire others to follow suit, creating a ripple effect of positive change. Employees within his company volunteer their time and skills, while competitors in the industry begin implementing similar initiatives. What started as a personal mission evolves into a movement, proving that even the smallest acts of kindness can spark monumental transformations. Before we move on to the conclusion of this story, let's pause to reflect on the lessons embedded in Arthur and Maria Clara's journey. Redemption is rarely linear. It requires patience, perseverance, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Yet, it's also profoundly rewarding, offering individuals the opportunity to heal old wounds and forge deeper connections with those around them. If this narrative has touched your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel for more stories that celebrate the resilience of the human spirit. Now let's conclude this remarkable tale with a powerful message of hope, renewal, and the enduring power of love. Months after Maria Clara's recovery, life has settled into a new rhythm for the reunited family. Arthur, now fully committed to his role as a son and brother, divides his time between managing his company and spearheading community initiatives aimed at addressing systemic inequalities. His decision to step back from the day-to-day operations of his business allows him to focus on what truly matters, fostering meaningful connections and creating opportunities for those less fortunate. One of his most ambitious projects is the establishment of a foundation named after Maria Clara, the Maria Clara Foundation for Family Empowerment. The foundation provides resources and support to single parents, homeless families, and children living in poverty. It offers everything from affordable housing and healthcare services to educational scholarships and vocational training programs. By naming it after his mother, Arthur honors her sacrifices and ensures that her legacy lives on through the countless lives touched by the foundation's work. The impact of these efforts extends far beyond Maria Clara and her immediate family. Employees within Arthur's company become ambassadors of change, volunteering their expertise to mentor underprivileged youth and organize fundraising events. Competitors in the industry take notice, inspired to adopt similar practices that prioritize social responsibility over profit margins. What began as a personal mission evolves into a cultural shift, challenging the notion that success must come at the expense of compassion. For Arthur, this transformation represents more than just a career pivot, it's a redefinition of purpose. He no longer measures his worth by the size of his bank account or the accolades he receives. Instead, he finds fulfillment in the smiles of children who can attend school without fear of hunger, in the relief of mothers who no longer have to choose between feeding their kids and paying rent, and in the gratitude of individuals who see a path forward where once there was none. Maria Clara, too, undergoes a remarkable evolution. With her health restored and financial burdens alleviated, she rediscovers the strength and optimism that defined her earlier years. Though she remains cautious about fully trusting Arthur, at least initially, she comes to appreciate the sincerity of his efforts. Over time, their relationship blossoms into something neither of them thought possible, a genuine partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. Maria Clara becomes actively involved in the foundation, sharing her experiences to inspire others facing similar struggles. Her story resonates deeply with audiences, reminding them that even in the darkest moments, hope can be found if one holds on long enough. She often speaks at community events, urging people to look beyond surface-level differences and recognize the humanity in everyone they encounter. Her bond with Lucas and Sophia grows stronger as well, Freed from the constant stress of survival, she's able to focus on nurturing their dreams and aspirations. Under her guidance, Lucas develops a passion for engineering, envisioning a future where he can design solutions to real-world problems. Sophia, meanwhile, channels her creativity into writing and art, expressing herself in ways that captivate those around her. Both children thrive in an environment where they feel safe, loved, and supported, a stark contrast to the uncertainty they endured on the streets. For Lucas and Sophia, having Arthur in their lives opens doors they never imagined possible. They learn to see him not just as a wealthy benefactor, but as a brother who genuinely cares about their well-being. Through their interactions with him, they gain insight into the importance of empathy, perseverance, and giving back to the community. Lucas, in particular, forms a close bond with Arthur, bonding over shared interests like chess and technology. During one memorable afternoon, Arthur teaches Lucas how to code, sparking a fascination with programming that leads to a summer internship at a tech startup. For Sophia, Arthur becomes a source of encouragement, praising her artistic talents and helping her enter competitions that showcase her work. These moments of connection reinforce the idea that family isn't defined solely by blood, it's shaped by the effort invested in nurturing relationships. Perhaps most importantly, Lucas and Sophia begin to understand the value of forgiveness. While they'll always carry scars from their difficult past, they learn that holding on to anger only perpetuates pain. Instead, they choose to embrace the second chance they've been given, cherishing the newfound stability and love surrounding them. To symbolize their renewed commitment to each other, Arthur organizes a special event, a community gathering held at the site of their former makeshift shelter beneath the overpass. The space has since been transformed into a vibrant community center, complete with classrooms, a library, and recreational areas for children. On the day of the unveiling, hundreds of people gather to celebrate the milestone, including locals, leaders, volunteers, and beneficiaries of the Foundation's programs. As Arthur stands at the podium flanked by Maria Clara, Lucas, and Sophia, he reflects on how far they've come. This place used to represent despair, he says, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. But today it stands as a beacon of hope, a reminder that no matter how broken things may seem, we have the power to rebuild. Maria Clara steps forward next, her presence commanding attention. "My son taught me something important during our journey," she begins, her eyes glistening with tears. "That success isn't about climbing higher, it's about reaching back and pulling others up with you." Her words elicit applause, followed by a standing ovation that echoes throughout the crowd. Later, as the sun sets over the newly renovated space, the family gathers for a quiet moment of reflection. Arthur wraps an arm around Maria Clara, pulling her close. "Thank you for believing in me," he whispers, his voice thick with gratitude, "even when I didn't deserve it." Maria Clara smiles, placing a hand on his cheek. "You've earned my trust, Arthur, and I'm proud of the man you've become." Nearby, Lucas and Sophia chase each other across the playground, their laughter filling the air. Watching them, Arthur feels a sense of peace he hasn't known in years. For the first time, he understands that true wealth isn't measured in dollars and cents. It's measured in the bonds we forge and the lives we touch. As the camera pans out, capturing the warmth and vitality of the community center, the narrator's voice returns, delivering a poignant closing message. Arthur Mendonce's story reminds us that success without compassion is hollow. It challenges us to ask ourselves, are we using our talents and resources to uplift others, or are we hoarding them for ourselves? In a world often divided by privilege and circumstance, stories like this prove that bridges can be built and wounds can heal if we're willing to extend a hand. Maria Clara's resilience shows us that even in the face of unimaginable hardship, the human spirit endures. Her unwavering love for her children serves as a guiding light, illuminating the path toward redemption and renewal. And for Lucas and Sophia, the future is bright. No longer burdened by the weight of their past, they stand poised to create a legacy of their own, one rooted in kindness, courage, and the belief that anything is possible. So, as you reflect on this tale of loss, reconciliation, and transformation, remember this: the choices we make define not only our lives, but the lives of those around us. Whether you're watching from the boardroom or the streets, your actions matter. Together, we can build a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. Before the screen fades to black, a final message appears inviting viewers to join. The movement sparked by Arthur and Maria Clara's journey. If this story moved you, consider supporting organizations working to combat homelessness, poverty, and inequality. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring narratives that remind us of the power of humanity. Because every act of kindness, no matter how small, creates ripples that can change the world.